you're playing against a football team in the Broncos that's getting a brand new quarterback in Brandon Allen, so you have a little bit of an advantage there. But it's really for the Browns. It's always been about the Browns. It's about how do you manage your expectations, how do you get ready for a football game, and can you get better week to week? And in the NFL, if you don't get better from week to week, then you're just going to be an average football team at the end of the day. And the Browns are below average. And so when you look at this team, first thing, discipline. Are they a disciplined football team? Absolutely not. They have 24 pre-snap penalties. That's just hard to do. That's fifth most in the NFL, 24 pre-snap penalties. First game of the season, 18 penalties. Last week against the Patriots, 13 penalties. So they're continuing to do the same thing over and over and over again, and they're not getting better. All three of those things, that's what get head coaches fired. So they have to find a better way to do it. Again, they have the ability to run the football. Don't put as much pressure on your quarterback. That's what I would be aiming to do. But at some point, you're going to have to throw the football down the field. That means Baker Mayfield is going to have to throw the ball to the guys in his jersey, not the opposing jersey. He leads the leads in interceptions, not doing a very good job of taking care of the ball.
Yeah, the pre-snap penalties and the turnovers, those are all focus issues, and that's something as a head coach, either you're coaching it that way or you're allowing it to happen. Either way, the results are it's going to be hard to win football games when you're doing that. I mean, if you're going to try to win games, you have to first do the things to avoid losing football games, and the Browns just have not been able to get out of their own way. And so looking at this matchup, I mean, the Cleveland Browns better be careful here. Like, it's easy to get up after a bye week knowing that you're going to play an undefeated Patriots team in Foxborough. But to have the attention to detail and the focus during the preparation to go play a 2-6 Denver Broncos team, it might not be as crispy, might not be as sharp. And this Denver Broncos team has had a lot of clubs on the ropes. It's just things late in games don't typically go their way. But the Denver Broncos are a sack safety by Von Miller away from getting a win in Indy. And I think we would all agree the Indianapolis Colts are a pretty good football team.
Or just a missed Adam Vinatieri field goal.
That's right.
Exactly.
Vinatieri's got to kick a field goal at the gun from 50-plus, or the Broncos win that game.
Exactly. So, I mean, the Cleveland Browns have to be careful with this one because, Nick, you said this earlier, they can't save their season with this win, but if they lose this game on Sunday, their season is over.
Right. That's exactly correct. There is no way to save it this week, but it can die this week. Because we need to talk about what they've done the last month. Because week 4, they beat Baltimore. And it's like, okay, Baltimore had just lost to Kansas City. They lose to Cleveland, and it's like, oh, all right. So we're tied for first in the division. In fact, they were in first in the division because of the tiebreaker. What have they done since then? They go to San Francisco on national television and get annihilated, embarrassed in that football game. They play Seattle and blow a 2-score lead, and then when they have a chance to come back and salvage the game, Baker throws a pick on that final drive. They then have a week to prepare because they have a bye week for New England. How does that game start? Here's the first 4 drives. 3 and out, turnover, turnover, turnover. You mentioned earlier, when we were talking about Baltimore, John Harbaugh's record after the bye. Andy Reid famously has an outstanding record after the bye. Bill Belichick's got a great record under all circumstances, but particularly after the bye. The best coaches have their teams extra prepared. Sean McVay, when he has extra time, whether it be a Thursday night game, beginning of a season, after a bye, going into this year, the only game he had lost in those circumstances were against Bill Belichick actually going. The best coaches in football get you ready to go. The Browns played, I thought, actually pretty well in that football game, except for the first quarter where they lost the football game. So now you play Denver, a team who is right now got to feel as sick about where they are as anybody in football, because they're 2-6, but they are 3 field goals in the final 30 seconds of games away from being 5-3, away from being tied with the Chiefs for first place in the AFC West. If you can't beat that team, with Brandon Allen taking his first career snaps, if you can't at least salvage this portion of the season a little bit, then, yeah, Freddie Kitchens is he coaching for his job? He is. Not because they'll fire him 9 games, 8 games.
At the end of the season, or do you think he's coaching for his job after this game?
Well, so I do not think John Dorsey is going to fire a first-year head coach inside of his first year. I do think if they lose this game, their season is over. And if this season is an abject disaster, Freddie Kitchens can sign his head coach death certificate, if you will, with a loss this weekend. Now, it won't actually be delivered delivered until the first week of January. But if they lose this game, I would wager any amount of money he is not the head coach week 1 of the 2020 season.
A big part of an offensive coach's job is to make sure that your young quarterback progresses and gets better year after year. Baker Mayfield has not gotten better. Actually, he's gotten worse. And so this football team, and Freddie Kitchens' job in particular, certainly is in big concern because their quarterback and their play has not gotten better. But
make sure the connection's not missed. Everybody knows the rules of DAP, Kenny.
Except I don't know the rules of DAP. Brian, big weekend for the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that seems lost so far this season. Carson Wentz still searching for an identity for his 4-4 team, and the search won't get any easier against Khalil Mack and the Chicago Bears and that defense. But Wentz said the Eagles offense isn't, quote, afraid of former Defensive Player of the Year Khalil Mack. So, Brian, who's got the edge in this matchup?
You know, when I think about the game, I have to start on the defensive side of the ball for the Eagles. And, you know, they've gotten much more healthy. Fletcher Cox is getting healthy. Brandon Graham continues to play well. But more importantly, in their secondary, they got 2 of the starters back, Ronald Darby and Jalen Mills. And getting those 2 guys back is going to help this defense tremendously. And, again, you're facing Mitchell Trubisky, 5 touchdowns on the season. They have problems scoring the football in Chicago. And so when I look at the Eagles defense, I give them the edge. But then you have to flip it over to the offensive side of the ball for the Eagles. And the big question, how do you slow down Khalil Mack? And there's a couple of different ways, and I would certainly want to run it by you. To slow down edge rushers, you run away from them, you double team them, or how about you just run the football? And that's something that the Eagles did a bunch last week, 41 times against the Buffalo Bills, and they were very successful with it with Miles Sanders. They were very successful with Jordan Howard. And so I think they should just try to do that. When you face a Bears defense that's going to get after the quarterback, run the football, the other thing you have to think about this Bears defense is simple. 2 of the last 3 games, they've given up over 150 yards rushing. They've given up over 150 yards rushing, which to me sounds kind of crazy when you're talking about one of the better defenses in the league. That's something that the Philadelphia Eagles can take advantage of. I think that's where they face, and that's where they start at offensively.
Well, the Eagles had a lot of success up in Buffalo running the football against a pretty good Buffalo front 7. So if they can continue to do that, I think that has to be their identity if they're going to have success on the offensive side of the ball and as a team, keep away from the opposing offense and then being able to move the ball methodically down the field. But if you're going to do that, you can't have a lot of negative plays. And that's the one thing that concerns me about this Philadelphia Eagles team. Don't turn the football over. No negatives in terms of tackles for losses or sacks on your quarterback. That's the area that they've got to make sure that they take care of going up against the Chicago Bears team, because the only real path to victory for the Bears is if their defense is able to steal extra possessions and create short fields for Mitch Trubisky. You learned all you needed to know about how the Bears feel about their quarterback last week against the Chargers when they get the ball on the 21-yard line with 43 seconds left.
And a timeout.
And Matt Nagy runs the clock out and elects to kick that long field goal as opposed to trying to gain more yards and put Eddie Pinheiro in a better situation. I think he did that because he doesn't trust his quarterback. That's not going to change in a week. So I think that's the biggest thing for the Eagles. Take care of the football, no negative plays, and you starve that Chicago Bears offense.
I love Matt Nagy as a play caller. I played against him in college, but not only did you not trust your quarterback, you didn't trust your running back that had a really good game last week. Hand the ball off to Montgomery, allow him to get 5, 6, 7 yards, make it
or God forbid a touchdown.
A touchdown.
You don't have to kick the field goal.
You don't have to kick the field goal. That was just a bad coaching job last week.
Our friend from Lock It In, Cousin Sal, and in honor of tonight being Friday Night SmackDown, I'll use one of his lines, which is a wrestling line. This Bears-Eagles match is the old loser leaves town match, where it is the loser of this football game, you can just go ahead and cross them off. All year long with Philly, we've been like, well, can you cross them off given the division? If they can't take the game plan that was so successful against Buffalo and beat a Bears team that is ripping itself apart at the seams because there is so much talent, I actually still think Matt Nagy, even at the game management stuff drove me crazy this weekend, does design an interesting offense, one of those Andy Reid folks, disciples, that the the fissure on that team is about the quarterback play and about how everything has to be done, keeping in mind, well, what can we trust our quarterback to do? I've got friends that do radio and media in Chicago. All week long, it has been, who are the best quarterbacks coming out of college? Should they go to Chase Daniel? If you lose to that Bears team, coming off that type of loss, where they're in last place in the NFC North, then guess what, Philly? You're not good. Like, we can say all this talent, all these expectations, only a half game. If you can't beat this Bears team this week, then you're just a bad football team. And what helps Philadelphia so much is exactly what you said. Playing Buffalo and Chicago in back-to-back weeks is just a gift from the scheduling gods because they're built so similarly. They have so many similarities on the defensive side and on the offensive side, and you were just so successful against Buffalo. Now, I know Chicago's going to expect you to go do the same thing, but at least Philly has a second punch where, okay, you're going to sell out against stopping the run, no problem. We still have a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback back there that if we need to, we can go to the passing game. But that is, to me, if Philly loses this game, it's a wrap for them, which is one of the reasons why I don't think they will lose this
But
game.
Chicago's the same team coming in. The Eagles get Deshaun Jackson back. At least we assume they do. And that has to open up the game a little bit. How do you see that factoring into what the Eagles are going to be able to do?
Well, I think it certainly does open up the game. They haven't had Deshaun Jackson healthy since week 1. And so that's going to open up the field for everyone, Zach Ertz included, who hasn't had a very much impact all
Because
season.
there's been no real deep threat.
Absolutely. So they haven't had that. And so I think it opens up things. But here's the thing. In order to get the ball deep, you got to have a 5 to 7 step drop. And that's the danger territory against this defense because those guys, they're running to that spot, that 5-step drop spot. That's where they're getting to on their pass rushes. So, again, I go right back to the run game. Because Chicago's not going to put up a lot of points offensively, you know that you can be much more patient with your run game if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. I would stick with that, and I wouldn't worry as much about getting the ball deep. I wouldn't worry about as much trying to get Deshaun Jackson involved in the offense as early. We're going to run the football until they stop it, and once they dedicate 8, 9 guys to stop the run, then we'll take some shots down the football field and see where we go from there.
No, you're absolutely right. The game plan for the Eagles on offense has to start with developing a plan for Khalil Mack. But overall, I think this Eagles team has to start fast. This is the first game of a 3-game homestand. It's an opportunity for them to gain some ground. They're already behind. They lost the head-to-head to the Dallas Cowboys. So they've got to build some momentum for their season. And if you're facing a team that's struggling in the Chicago Bears, if you start fast and get on them early, you continue to have that doubt with that Bears sideline. So I think this is a situation where if the Eagles handle their business in the first half, they can put this game away early.
And you mentioned the 3-game homestand, but the next 2 are New England and Seattle. Yeah. So if you can't beat the Bears at home, the hell chance you have against those 2 teams.
Right. All right, Brian, stick around. Coming up, did Jimmy G prove he's more than just a game manager? Talk some 49ers next on First Things First.
Damn game. You gotta
in your bias. I'm glad about that.
As you are, because you picked the Nationals after Jessica Mendoza. That he convinced you.
We're talking about you
I
right
understand.
now.
There we go. I got it. But what I'm saying to you is this: if you have a 2-1 lead and you're keep this into consideration. We're talking about starting pitchers who show up and pitch 6 to 7 innings. We just witnessed Greinke, who's the 3rd starter, go 6 1/3 full innings, okay, and hold them to 1 hit ball. Why is it wrong for me to then say, okay, Cole is better, and he only got 2.5 innings that he would have to pitch? Why couldn't he shut down and hold him to a 2-1 lead? You watched Madison Park Garden years ago against Kansas City on 3 days rest, if I remember correctly. Take the complete game. Don't
on you. It's a one-run game. It's late. It's the seventh.